First of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming. I know it's an extra requirement on top of all the other hoops we make you jump through. So I really appreciate you guys being here and coaching. I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to bring up Josh. He's got like 5 minutes for you on some general stuff.
But I really want to just come introduce myself as a hockey director for District 3. It's a position that I've stepped into, and quite frankly, it's pretty wide open. So if there's things that you would like to see or that we can help you out with at the district level, please feel free to reach out. We're kind of looking to up some things that we can do from the district level on down. Also, just put in a quick little plug that's going to be happening in the spring. There's a Futures program that started last year for boys and girls that are 13 and 15 that happens at the same time as the HP. I think you're going to be getting into all that stuff here. But one of the things that I want to reach out to you is we're always looking for coaches. So if that's something that, I think it's 13 skill sessions, practice sessions, I think there's 1 3-on-3 type game scenario during the middle, and then there's 2 games at the end. It's a short thing. You get to work with some coaches from around the district. You get to have some kids from around the district you get to work with. We would love to get lots of new blood involved there. And so if there's anything, or if that interests you at all, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, we're going to be recruiting coaches. I'm going to be trying to work with Miles throughout the year and try and grab some of you guys to come on board and help with that. But other than that, I just want to thank you for coaching. I know it's kind of a big commitment sometimes. Thanks for everything that you're doing. Hopefully the year goes well. I know you've got a great support system here on Wayzata Youth. But anything else, let me know. Feel free to reach out. Email d3coaching@gmail.com. And I see that's getting written down everywhere, so I'll expect lots of emails. No, that's fine. It's on the website. But from the district level, anything that we could do, different clinics, part of the USA Hockey new CEP stuff is going to be some continuing ed that needs to happen when you get to level 4 and 5. So that's something I want to be able to take local and bring down here and maybe get on the ice or do something along those lines. So just know that I'm here and I'm open to helping out with whatever it is. So, and if something else pops up during the year, feel free to reach out. I've screwed up a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, so I can probably help you get out of something. All right. Any questions for me?
Great. Hi, my name is Tia Senenfelder. I'm a member of the board of directors here at Wayzata, and I'm going to take us through a little bit of content and then introduce a guest that we have with us today. So we really are trying to make a much more purposeful effort of making sure that everybody is aware of the code of conduct and the newly crafted inclusion and diversity statement. So throughout all of hockey and many sports, but unfortunately even here at Wayzata as well, we have some work to do to make sure that everybody's aware of the code of conduct and the expectations, and that all of us do the best that we can to uphold those and really bring the best out of everybody here. So I'm going to walk us through a couple things that we've put in place. So by now, hopefully, as a coach, as a parent of a skater, as a member of the association, hopefully you've seen multiple times information on our code of conduct. Again, we're making a more concerted effort to have multiple touch points of this content with the association, one of them also being the printed brochures that you have, as well as a hard copy signature, which your team managers are fully expecting to get from you, and then they'll facilitate getting the signatures from your team. But all of this is really in pursuit of just, again, making sure that everybody in the association has a very has a shared understanding that this content is there, and these are the expectations that we're putting out for everybody in the association. So real briefly, I'm just going to touch on a couple trends that we're seeing across hockey and across athletics at large that really demonstrate the need to have more expectations put in place around code of conduct and creating an inclusive environment for everybody. And then we're really lucky to have Lambert Brown here. I'm sure many of you know who he is, just being in the athletic space in Wayzata. But he's really a fantastic coach and an advocate for creating a safe and inclusive environment for athletes. And so he's walking us through some really great content that hopefully you can take with you as you think about leading your teams and how you want your team to show up for each other. So he's going to walk us through about 25 minutes of best practices, mindsets, things that you can incorporate to create that great environment for your team. And then lastly, I'll just close us out with a reminder of what to do if concerns arise. It's quite straightforward, but your first point of contact should be Safe Sport. You should encourage anybody who has a concern to file that with Safe Sport. There's also a form on our website where someone, if they have a concern, can document that, and then it can route to a small panel within the board of directors that will then look into it. But those are really the primary things, and it's just good for you to be aware of that and then direct anybody there from your team that might have a concern. There's a number of reasons why we really need to prioritize thinking about having really clear code of conduct and having really clear expectations around them. Just nationwide, allegations of misconduct in sports have increased 300% over the past 2 years. And the vast majority of the concerns that are coming forward are in the theme of emotional or physical misconduct, or and there's on the screen you'll see a couple examples of what that could be. That could be ridiculing, that could be taunting, name calling, intimidating. It's by no means exhaustive, but I think as coaches and as leaders in this organization, just know that that's where Safe Sport and USA Hockey are seeing the bulk of concerns come forward that they then are, of course, obligated to look into. There's 1,800 cases noted on the centralized disciplinary database that is out there for the public to see and understand what things have happened negatively in this space. And then unfortunately, even within our own association, there are an alarming amount of concerns being brought forward that we have to take seriously, because ultimately we want everybody to feel safe and welcome when they're at Wayzata Youth Hockey. So I'm going to turn it over to Lambert Brown now to walk us through some really great best practices in this space.
How's everybody doing? Good. I can get some feedback because that's just how I work. I'm Lambert Brown. This is, I guess, my 22nd year coaching. I am the head football coach at Wayzata High School, and also achievement specialist at Wayzata High School. How we got here is kind of a long road, but a portion of this presentation, which was like a 2-3 hour session deal that we did with every teacher and worker at Wayzata High School and then across the district. And then about a year ago, I presented this to all Wayzata High School coaches and directors. And that has moved on to presenting it to different associations. And so that's kind of how we went from there to here. I'm taking this long presentation. You're going to get it in about 25 minutes. So if we can be locked in, it's going to be awesome. I appreciate that. And so as we go through a couple things that I just want to make sure why I'm excited to be here is one, we have an opportunity to change lives. Like I love coaching. Like I'm blessed. I get to do what I want every single day. Like when I met my wife, she said, I want to own a dance studio, and I said I want to be a head football coach. My wife owns a dance studio. I get to be a head football coach. I have nothing to complain about in life. And so with that, though, comes a great responsibility, right? And so I look at it, and like every time, and we get to in our coach's office, and we have kids that screw up, just like you're going to have kids that make a mistake and all those things. And I look at it like every time I have a kid on my team, I have the opportunity to change their lives. Right? Every time that a kid makes a mistake, I'm going to try to find every way I can to fix that, correct that, help them become better people. Because anytime I remove them, I remove that opportunity and that touch point to be the person that changes their lives. And that's why I coach. That's why I coach. So you have that same opportunity. So the challenge as we go through this, and one of the things I want you to end and leave with is, be the coach you needed. Right? You're all in coaching for a reason because sport's been good to you. You've had a coach at some point that's been great to you and led to some great things, and also you probably had some coaches that didn't do great things, and that's okay. We're going to make mistakes. Like I make mistakes all the time. I'm not going to do everything right. I don't think anybody expects you to do everything right, but the thought process of the fact that we've got this great opportunity to change lives. And what that starts with is, in my opinion, looking at the way that we perceive our kids and what we bring to them. And so what that means is we all have some type of internal bias, right? Like that's just how we're wired. And so what we do know, though, is how we coach kids starts with us. How we coach kids starts with us. So when a kid comes in, what I believe about that kid, maybe it's what I've heard from a past coach. Maybe, hey, this is what they do in the neighborhood, or my kid doesn't like this kid, and therefore I think this kid's a jerk, or whatever those things could be. Those things, my belief about somebody affects the way that I act towards them. Okay? It's just the way, right? It's the way it is. So the way that I think about somebody affects the way that I act towards them. That then impacts the way that what they think about themselves, and then they're going to give that back to us. And so when I look at coaching and how we get there, the ownership of being the empowered adult and the one that can show somebody that there's greatness within them, no matter what that may be, that's on us. That's on us. We can't pass that up. And so when we're thinking about that, then we're working with our kids and think about, as we're working with somebody, am I going into this, hey, I just think it's because of this, the way this kid is, or the way that I perceive this kid. And if I am, that's okay. Like, it's probably going to happen, right? It's probably going to happen. But do I have the ability to interrupt that and say, I'm going to do other things? And maybe if I pour into that kid and show them what I believe that they can do and show them their path to greatness, that will allow them to show different behavior and lead us to what we need. So I'm going to talk a little bit about microaggressions. Right now I'm going to go through the definitions fairly quick because I want to spend more time on how to respond. I want to spend more time on how to respond. But one of the things that I want us to know as we talk through this is, like, there's like nothing I'm talking about is like a political statement or a thing like this. Is about just creating great student experience for each and every kid, right? For each and every player that we have. And so as we're thinking about how can we create a great experience, also realize there's a reason why I'm here, and it's because not everybody's had a great experience, right? That's just the reality of it, right? And so as we're thinking through that, then how can we do everything we can to make sure that we get that, create that great experience? And so what are microaggressions? Microaggressions are everyday slights, put downs, indignities, insults that people of color, women, LGBTQ community, or just an underrepresented population go through in their day-to-day interactions with people. So that's this broad piece. And so I'm going to break them down into a couple things. Microassaults is what you would most likely think about in terms of a microaggression. It's the most blatant. As verbal, nonverbal, or environmental. So you might think of it as like just overt discrimination. So that would be, and then, so a verbal assault, like name-including, derogatory words and phrases. Nonverbal, like just like discriminatory behavior. You can't be here, can't be here, that piece. And then environmental microassaults, like somebody offensive sign, posters, visual displays. What you will see, and this is just certainly a trend at the high school, certainly a trend across, is part of the increase in micro assaults and just assaults. I don't really like the term micro, but in terms of assaults, is the fact that kids are just a little bit more bold because they don't have to say things to people's faces, right? Like, there's a point in time where you said something to somebody and they would address it right then and there, and now they can, feel some type of way and then go home and send a message or put something out there and do that. And so those things are going to come up. And I think it's important that as we, as coaches, look at how we're going to address these things, that we take those just as serious, because the impact is the same. Does that make sense? If we take those just as serious. So that's what micro assaults are. Micro insults, a comment or action that communicates insensitivity to or disregards a person's identity or heritage. So what that would look like is we're going to disregard, like that would be, hey, we've got a mix of young people who play hockey. That would be a simple one that, I'm sure we've heard is hey, you're pretty good at hockey for a girl, right? And we got girls that are kicking butt and doing a great job. Which means, typically, why I bring that example up, is that typically when somebody says that, they try to mean that as a compliment, like you're good. But the impact might be that I feel like I'm good, but also I'm good with this caveat that because of this. Does that make sense? With this caveat, and so that shouldn't be that way. And then a micro-invalidation is a comment or action that ignores or dismisses the thoughts, feelings, experiences of a member of underrepresented community. Where this typically comes up the most is actually in adults. So what it shows up the most is somebody comes up, which is really hard to do in general, and says, this happened. And then somebody responds with, they didn't mean it that way. And they disregard that the impact was different than the intent, right? That the impact on this kid was hard, and it's hard enough to say, hey, this came up, and to go to a trusted adult and say that, and then we dismiss it, and we almost double down on the trauma that the kid's going through, or the impact, right? And so that comes up quite a bit. Or the other piece is, well, I just don't think that kid would do that. And I think we all have hope and belief that kids are going to do great things. We also know that kids, adults, make mistakes and do the wrong and don't always necessarily do the right thing. And so, as adults, our job is to hear that, validate their experience, and make sure that we follow up appropriately. So I'm going to talk about following up appropriately here in a second. So one of the biggest things that the effect has is this stereotype threat of like, I have to fit into this mold because that's what you keep telling me that I am. Okay, I have to fit into this mold, and so whatever those gaps are, and then one of the biggest pieces that we see in youth sports is just a sense of not belonging. Okay, a sense of feeling like I'm different than everybody else here and I don't belong. Okay, and that affects their entire experience then, because then everything that I'm doing can lead to these things, right? So if I feel like all I want to do is feel like I'm a part of the team, and I don't, well, I might be a little angry. I might lose my sense of belonging. I might feel anxious about coming because I don't know what's going to be said. Okay? I might, my confidence is going to be down. I might start showing up late. I might just, stop showing up altogether, or find excuses not to be there. Okay? So it can show up in lots of different ways for different people. But all that really revolves around if I don't feel like I belong on this team and I'm different than everybody on this team, and I don't feel supported. Okay. So here's what I'm going to spend most of my time on here. I don't expect that when you leave here, you're like, hey, Johnny, you said this, and that is a micro insult, and this is why. Like, that's not the purpose of why I'm here. Here's what it is. If an interaction happens and it doesn't feel good, our job is to address it, right? If it doesn't feel good, our job is to address it, and our job is to address it now. And so when we think through that, then this Raven approach, we'll send this out. So like, you don't have to have it, but I'd say like anything, like if you know, which is probably going to happen at some point, that you're going to have to redirect, everything takes practice, right? Everything takes practice. So if the only time you look at this is today, and you leave, and you're like, wait, what's the best way for me to do this? Well, I'd say I'd take some time and look at this, be prepared, because these are uncomfortable for adults just like they are for kids, right? But we have to live in a little bit of productive discomfort as adults because that's our job, right? That's what we signed up for when we put the title of coach in front of our name. So one of the things, so if we see here of an interaction, one of our most important action to do right away is just to redirect. Okay, redirection can look a couple different ways. Okay, one could be you might hear something after the fact, right? Hey, something happened in the locker room, somebody comes and reports it. Okay, that redirection could look like, hey, I'm calling somebody in, this got brought up, and I'm going to call somebody and talk to them about the impact and talk to them about what happened. Does that make sense? You might be on the ice and you hear something that you know is not okay. Okay, then you'd have to make some professional judgment here. What does that look like for what I need to do? Hey, did everybody hear this and it's egregious enough that I need to stop practice and hit it right now, right? Stop practice and hit it right now. Is it something that, it happened between two players and I got to pull them aside and have a conversation with that? I think one of the other pieces as you go through and you're thinking through how do I respond to both the individual and say, hey, here's a learning moment for you in terms of the impact of your words and how it can make other people feel, is also making sure that there's an opportunity for wrap around with the team, depending on where it is, right? Does that make sense? Not everything involves the entire team, but if everybody knows what's going on and you don't address it, they're looking at you like it's not that big of a deal to you, right? So if everybody's in the locker room and two kids get in a fight and something inappropriate is said, right? And everybody knows as a coach, then you go, well, I can't wait to get into this drill. Now you put the game in front of the kids' experience and their learning, right? And they know that. They feel that, okay? And the kids who are involved and the kid who certainly had the microaggression against them is really going to feel that then. So not only did this happen in the locker room and everybody knows about it, but they can't even address it. So that's what that redirection is for, okay? The other piece is I'm asking probing questions for clarity. So you might hear something you might not always know. That happens too. I'm not quite sure what I heard there, Pulling over, hey T, I heard you say this. Can you just I'm not quite sure what you meant about that. Can you give me a little bit of clarity on what you were meaning by that? and give somebody an opportunity to talk through something. That's what asking for is, or, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So there's ways to ask probing questions that keeps people from being defensive, right? Keeps people from being defensive, and so, which is hard to do also. One of the things the biggest thing that we can do is clarify values. Hey, at Wayzata Hockey, hey, this happened, that's not the Wayzata way. Hey, Wayzata Hockey, this is what we believe in. And you can clarify those values because they've signed up and decided to be a part of this. Does that make sense? And they want to belong as well, okay? And so clarifying those values in terms of what we believe, both as an organization and then as a team, can help bring that down. And then emphasize your thoughts or feelings. So in that, hey, in my experience, hey, this, or hey, this is, have you thought through how this comment could make one of your teammates feel? Hey, I know you don't want to be a bad teammate. Hey, I know you're trying to be a leader or in these things, but have you thought through when you make these type of comments, this is what occurs. This is how this is making this other person feel. Okay? And then next steps, reflect, decide what to do next time you encounter it. So that's part of this whole piece too. Some teams are going to go through the year and have minimal pieces of this, and some teams are going to have more. It's all going to depend on your player makeup. That's the reality of it. So, but I know this, if I don't know what's going to happen, I'd rather be prepared. I'd rather be prepared in that. So when you're thinking through whether I call somebody out, or call somebody in, and how you respond to that, you got to use a little professional judgment. But here would be my biggest thing is, and what I hear from students, what I hear from students at the high school, what I hear from players is, I think they'd rather have you address it and not do it perfectly than let the opportunity go, then let that go. Does that make sense? So I'm not stressed, and I would not worry about, hey, am I gonna follow each and every step of the Raven approach? Like I do this every day. I don't follow each and every step every single time, right? I figure, what's that situation? What does it require of me to make sure that we're growing, and more so that the student learns what the impact of what happened, right? So the player learns, hey, this is the impact of your words and your actions on your team and your teammate, that the teammate feels supported, right? And that it doesn't happen again. Does that make sense? That's the overall goal of these things. So does that make sense for everybody? I'm going to send this out. I'm like flying. And so right now, here's what I'd like to just take a minute to do is, I'm not going to show the video because it's like 12 minutes long, but you've heard about this. I would like you just to think through. You probably know better examples of what happens on the ice or in the locker room than I do, right? I don't coach hockey, right? I coach. So I'd like you just to, with somebody around you, just think through, hey, what's an example? Create an example or a scenario within, and then think through how you would respond, right? Because I think one of the pieces that I know about this about myself, when I don't practice or think through how I'm going to respond, I can let emotions get me. Does that make sense? And then the response isn't the way that I want. So I have found that I'm better when I go, hey, like I got a question, like I tend to say, hey, like tell me more about that. Like I'm confused on what you're trying to say right here. Tell me more about what you mean. That helps me breathe a little bit and think about how I'm going to respond, especially if it's something egregious, right? And so I think thinking through those things. So let's take just a couple minutes. How's that? Let's take a couple minutes within your group here. Find a couple people, think through a scenario that could happen on the ice or in the locker room and how you would respond. Let's go. The Raven approach, as you think through this, right, and the redirect, that is, hey, something happens outside of us, I hear it, right, and then also, the claim approach is another approach here. This approach is, hey, somebody brings something up to you, right? I think this is an approach you can use, whether somebody talks about how you're coaching, somebody talks about the experience that they're having, somebody talks about maybe something that you said, right? All those things, right? A microcrash, whatever that would be, right? Here's an approach that you can use and how to best respond, okay? So that first part of that is calming yourself, right? And so thinking through, like I mentioned this, like if I'm not prepared and somebody says something, I might have reasons for it. I might, I've probably got maybe deep belief in what I'm doing, but being able to calm myself so I can hear what the other person's saying, okay? So calm my defenses, and then be able to actively listen and focus on learning. So if a player's coming up and they're talking about their experience and something that's happened, and you're a part of that, right? And you're a part of that, okay, you're creating that negative experience if that happens, right? Hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, okay, listening for empathy rather than listening to respond, okay, makes a big difference, right? We can work and work through a mistake that's made, or maybe something that was said that didn't come off the right way, right? Like everybody's different. Like I'm a believer in like my program. I tell coaches all the time. Like I coach football, right? On the football field is not the place for sarcasm. You got jokes and that because everybody's locked in, and we got 140 kids that are all competing for a spot. And every time you make a joke, you might be kidding around, but they're going to take that to heart and go, man, coach might really feel like that, somebody breaks a run or something like, oh yeah, take off the hitch, or like that. You might be joking, you think it's funny, and the kid's going, dang, coach thinks I'm really slow. He ain't going to play me. So like I'm a believer in that. Like there's no place in sarcasm on a competitive field, right, or on the ice, okay, in a competitive endeavor, because we lose the ability to how they're going to take that, right, in competitive situations. So then I'm listening then to hear, hey, what is the impact of that, okay? And then I think the biggest piece, own it, okay? You don't have to say, hey, this is what I meant, like I said this to you, and this is what I meant, or you didn't take it the right way. That's okay. Hey, own at least, at minimum, own the fact that what you said had that impact. Does that make sense? Hey, I apologize. What I said wasn't appropriate, and that clearly led to a negative experience for you. I realize, that's a big piece to building and repairing a relationship, and a player wanting to come back and play again next year, right? Everybody here is youth, correct? So like when I talk to our youth football coaches, I know a coach comes and talks like, my biggest thing for our youth coaches is it's a success when the kids come back and play next year, right? When the kids come back and play next year. So what I do, when I look and go, all right, what teams have a bunch of kids dropping out? Kids got a bunch of kids dropping out. I want to figure out why, right? And so typically it's not about skill level. Typically it's about experience, right? Typically it's about experience. And so, and then how much you seek to repair harm without asking more for them. So the hard part is like our players' responsibility isn't to educate you as coaches, right? If you're unsure about what you said and how that had the impact on somebody, talk to somebody. Call me. Talk to somebody. Look it up on the internet. Hey, I don't quite understand this. I'm going to try to look it up and see. There's plenty of ways to do that, but it's really difficult for a kid to have to not only address something that's having a negative effect on them, but also be responsible for the learning of an adult. Does that make sense? But also be responsible for the learning of adult. So then inquire, like it's okay. Like I think some of the best times of growth for me as a coach was doing something that I didn't feel great about and going, hey, like this happened, like how could I handle that better? Right? And just talking to somebody else, or if I'm leaving, I'm going, oh, that's sitting with me. Like you drive home and you go, oh, I don't know if that went the way that I wanted it to. Just calling somebody else, that maybe somebody else that's on another coach or somebody else to go, hey, like what was your perspective on this? And typically if I don't feel great about it, I got an obligation to address it, right? I need to address it. There are plenty of times I call kids in my office and say, and it might be, in the locker room beforehand, or, hey, can you come a couple minutes early? I just want to chat with you, or whatever. And just say, hey, like this happened at practice yesterday. It didn't feel great. I don't know how it felt for you, but it didn't feel great for me. Can we talk about it quick? Just to make sure that I'm not missing that. So, I tell kids, like the only things I don't care if they like me, okay? I got enough friends, okay? I don't need many more friends, okay? But I want them to know that I pushed them to reach their potential, and I cared about them, right? I cared about them. So, and then move forward, okay? Best apology is to not make the mistake again, okay? Best apology is not to make the same mistake again. So thinking about, hey, and now that I know better, how can I do better? Okay? Now that I know better, how can I do better, and continue to push that forward. So, I'm not a big, apology guy in terms of like, hey, sorry is great, but the best apology is to not do it again. It's to change the behavior, okay? Best apology is to change the behavior. So when you're thinking about that, and this clean approach is really there's two separate sets of things we're talking about. You hear it, and the obligation to address it, okay? I hear something happen, or somebody comes and reports something afterwards, and making sure that I'm doing everything I can to have a great player experience so that they know that I care about them, and addressing it. And then somebody says something that you did, right? Which is often harder, so I do it second, okay? It's often the harder part because we know, like I know you're all in this room because you care about kids. You're here, you're like, nobody wakes up Sunday morning and says, I can't wait to do, like, you could be doing anything else in the world and you chose to show up and be here for kids. That's a big deal. And that's a big deal. And so we know that, and sometimes when we know what our purpose is or why we're doing something and our actions don't align, it doesn't feel good, and we want to defend why we're doing it, okay? I'm going to encourage you to put those defenses down and hear what people have to say, right? And hear, especially if they take the time. And so the other big piece, okay, the other big piece is in both those situations, when if something's brought to your attention, believe them. Believe them. Like I can rarely think of times in my coaching career and my career over at the high school and in teaching and being in administration that somebody brings something up that's a difficult conversation and there's not some truth to it. That makes sense? And so, again, like a really negative impact is somebody brings something up and you say, well, that didn't happen. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have all the answers. Hey, thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to check into that right now. I'm going to check into that. The other piece that you guys have, which I don't have because I don't coach parents. I tell parents that all the time. And I mean, like, I'm not here to coach you. Is you've got these interactions and relationships, right? Like you're typically coming through, and I got a 9th grade son right now, and so when he's played 9th grade football this year, like I'd walk over to the sideline, and the parents like, well, you've known me for a long time, but this is a different setting, like, and you've got that's a real piece for what you guys are going through, and having friendships and kid friendships and all those things, and stand on what's right. At the end of the day, stand on what's right, and making sure, and there more often than not you hear my kid wouldn't do that, or that didn't happen, or I'm not sure about that. And we all know, kids can be treacherous sometimes. Kids can do some, and that's okay. That's reality, right? But how we respond and leading them to growth is also part of what we have to do. So thinking through that, and so that's the claim approach right there. Also, when somebody brings something up, I think it's important that you know that sometimes they don't want anything done. Sometimes they just want to tell you, right? That happens often too. Like, I just want to tell you what happened. This happened, but I don't want you to do anything, okay? You got to make some decisions on what that looks like and what you need to do. And that usually the fact that they don't want you to do anything is based on don't know what the repercussions are going to be, right? Like, I brought this up because it's really affecting me. But like if you bring this up, well, then they're not going to like me, and I'm not going to be part of this group. And I already feel like I don't belong, and now I'm really going to feel like I don't belong. Like I'm going to be the outsider because they feel like, I told on them, and they did those things. You've got as you go through some of these things, an obligation to figure out what that is and how do I best respond, right? Because there's some times that, kid will come up and they'll talk about something. Hey, I don't want you to do anything. Hey, I appreciate that, but I got to make sure that I'm supporting you, and I got to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And so I'm gonna do my best to protect you in this. So thinking about that, and then there are some resources that are going to be out. So when I said that was good, I feel like I rocked that in fast. You're talking 6 hours, and that was 25 minutes. There's going to be some resources that we send out that are specific to hockey. So I've got some of that. We'll send out the Claim. We'll send out the Raven. There'll be videos with both that are just a little bit longer videos in there, and some videos with a little bit more detail in terms of what some microaggressions are that just give some more examples. Does that make sense? And so I appreciate your listening. I know there's hockey here and hockey here, and we're looking at the score, and it looks like a really good game, and all those things. I get it. And so all that's awesome. The skills that you're going to go learn after this, awesome. It's all really good things. Okay? But if I want a player to learn the skill, and I want a player to take my coaching, okay, and I want a player to move forward and have deep belief in me that I believe in them, okay, this coaching the person has to come first. Coaching the person has to come first. And so they scored. That's but it's okay. So I just want you to think through that, though. And again, I appreciate that. I wholeheartedly believe in this, and I hope you guys put it in your heart somewhere that you've got an incredible opportunity to change a kid's lives. I think about a couple coaches that I had growing up that made such a deep impact on me that I couldn't wait to be a coach, right? And so every day I'm fighting to be that guy for somebody else, right? I'm fighting to be that guy for somebody else, and I hope you guys go out there on the ice and everybody here goes on the ice and fights for that, because you got a deep impact. You got a deep impact, and so I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. And enjoy the rest of what you got going today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lambert. I will just close us out with a couple things, and then I'll turn it over to Andy to give some D3 updates. So I don't usually like to read a slide to you. Obviously, you can read this, but it is super important. So I'll just take a minute so that we can all hear our inclusion and diversity statement together. So at Wayzata Youth Hockey, we are committed to cultivating an environment where diverse backgrounds and experiences are welcome. We support all teammates, coaches, fans, officials, facilities workers, volunteers, and opponents who provide their time and effort to make hockey possible. We believe all of our interactions should be safe and inclusive of all walks of life, regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, gender, disability, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. And just a really helpful little guide at the bottom. Just ask yourself if what I'm doing inclusive of every participant and family, despite their background and despite who they are. If yes, keep going, but if not, it's probably time to change. So that is our inclusion statement. And then expectations of everybody, not just coaches, but our expectation of every single adult in our association is to know it, to role model it, and to reinforce it if concern should come up, which is why there's just additional touch points like the brochures that you will all have that your team managers are expecting. This will be another piece of touch point communication for families to have the code of conduct and statement with them and acknowledge that they received it. So your team managers are expecting that and know what to do with it. And then lastly, I mentioned in the beginning, but there's multiple ways to support if a concern comes up. So you can always direct someone to Safe Sport to file the concern that way. There's a form on our website that under Code of Conduct where people can submit a concern that way, or it can be brought forward to the Board of Directors directly as well. And Andy will touch on another way to share concerns too. And then just lastly, thank you. I don't think I could say it better than Lambert, but you're sharing not just your expertise in hockey, but just what it means to be a leader, to be brave, to try something hard, to get better. So thank you for sharing that with the boys and girls in our program. And I'll turn it over to Andy.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for being here while he's doing this. My name's Andy Nordseth, Wayzata Youth Hockey Association board member, and my role is to be the representative on the D3 board. So I do 2 meetings a month. Real quick to touch on what Coach Brown and Tia just did. One other thing you can do, and it wasn't mentioned, if it happens during play on the ice with officials, you can alert, this is in the Minnesota Hockey Handbook, what I'm telling you, alert the officials. If they believe it to be true, they can call a match penalty, and you guys know what that means. So that'll generate a hearing, and it's another avenue to get an official response and a solution to it. So that wasn't mentioned, but if it happens during play and you believe it to be true, alert a referee and let them make the decision, and they can call a match penalty, and that'll be it from there. So if you Google Minnesota Hockey Handbook, this website comes up. Click on that link. Please familiarize yourselves with it if you're not. That is the hockey rule book, okay? Anything else that you see is sort of a supplement to this, but this is the rule book, and you're better served if you're familiar with it. Yeah. You can Google Minnesota Hockey District 3, and you'll get this website. If you click on that coach button up there, without the pull downs, just click on the coach button. You'll get this. This is the home page. And you'll see that thing right there with the little call out. It says coach and manager registration. Please do that. Please do that today before you leave the building. You can do it right now if you want to. The only reason that's there is for them to know who you are so they can distribute information to you. They want your email address. And district-wide, it's a lot of coaches. This is the way they want to manage that. They don't want to get a whole bunch of different spreadsheets from all these people. So please click on that, and they know who you are, and they can contact you and fill you in with stuff. That's it. Oh, the fall meeting info. This is how you can get the presentation I'm going to give you. Right there, coach presentation. You guys remember going up to Brooklyn Park on a Monday evening? This is in lieu of that. So they've delegated it to the associations now. Hopefully it sticks, and we can knock this out real quick. This is the Matt Olsenowski part of it. I'm not a coach, so you are shooting the messenger if you shoot me. But here it is, okay? Nothing's changed. If you guys have a game misconduct, keyword being game, if it's just a misconduct, it's a misconduct. It's not a big deal, right? But if the word game is in front of it, think game suspension then, okay? So if you have a player that receives a game misconduct, you have to report it to Matt Olsenowski within 24 hours. They'll know because it's on Game Sheet, and what happens is when it's uploaded into the cloud, if there's a further action or follow-up required, it flags it. So they can quickly go through and see all the games at any time in the whole district and see which ones, click on it, and then they're going to be waiting for your email, okay? What you do is you go to the District 3 website, and there's a little button to fill out a form for self-reporting. Do that as soon as possible, all right? If you don't, then it's going to come back. They'll tell the director calls me, then we call you, and then now you're in trouble too. All right, so do yourself a favor. The main reason that they want to hear about it is they want to understand what you're going to do. What game is the player going to serve the suspension to understand that there's a plan. And that's how you do it. That's the match penalty. You guys understand how those work. Go through that. Rosters, does anybody have any issues with their rosters? Are we all good? You guys are all uploaded in the game sheet and everything. That's manager stuff, but sometimes it affects you a little bit because if it's not approved, it could be because of you. If there's a issue with your education or your certification, stuff like that, it could be holding it up. So if everybody's good, great. If there's a problem, you can let me know and I can talk to our registrar. The official roster with the link to the USA Hockey roster is the official roster. There's no more building up rosters or creating things. And so with that, if there is a suspension, remember when you guys are starting your games, you look at the game sheet thing and you do that before the game, not after the game. You're not allowed, you guys don't have the right to QC it, right? Do a quality check. That's for the officials to do. If you look down and say, well, no, Johnny actually scored that goal and not Jimmy, that's just kind of too bad. That's the way they called it, okay? You're not allowed to change that. You can ask the ref kindly if he would change it, and he might or he might not. You're looking at that game sheet before the game because you're certifying the roster. That's all you're really doing. So if you have a player that's suspended, that's the time where you should flag them if they're not already flagged. And line them out, okay? Goalie substitutions doesn't really apply to you guys. That's more of a squirt problem. There aren't any squirt 10Us here today, including the 35 game thing. Locker room honor, this is a big one, okay? This is being taken very seriously. It's part of what was talked about earlier today. This is before and after the games. Okay, if you guys have a designated locker room monitor, that's fine. They're also supposed to be rostered. That's new this year. So make sure that they are doing that. Their name will be listed on the roster as a locker room monitor. If the coach is the locker room monitor, then you don't have to do anything. You're okay by default. You've been through Safe Sport and all that stuff. Where we've seen the most instances is right after the games. So you guys are on the bench, maybe debriefing the game, maybe talking to a friend, whatever, and then something's going on in the locker room. You guys have to send an assistant back there as soon as the game's over with so that the players aren't unattended at any time. Before the games, we know some players like to get here early. That's fine. Just tell them to stay out of the locker room, okay? If they're in the locker room, you have to be in the locker room. Anybody heard of locker room boxing? Locker boxing for short. It's really popular right now. Don't let them do that, okay? Any questions on locker room monitors? Okay, it's important. Please take it seriously.
Somebody gets kicked out, they need to be escorted too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Miles. If there's an ejection, and they're heading back, you got to go with them. Send somebody with them, okay? No player at any time, from the time that they show up to the time that they leave, will be in the locker room by themselves. Tournaments, you guys know all that. The dates are on the District 3 calendar too. Sometimes that's a question. You can go to District 3 and look forward, and you can see when all the end of year district tournaments are. You can see when the regional tournaments are and where they're at, and when the state tournaments are and where they're at. That's all published already. High performance, Josh touched on it a little bit. It's 14, 15U high performance, tier 1, tier 2. That's a district team, so it's the opportunity for us as District 3 to compete against the state. So again, if you register as a coach, you'll get a lot more information on this going forward, because the District 3 admin, it's their baby, right? They want to get you involved, so you'll likely be asked to help coach. If you can or don't want to do that, that's fine. But then you're going to be asked to help evaluate. And I think if there's players on your team that you feel should be on that team, they need an advocate, and it needs to be you, because the Maple Grove guy is not going to advocate for the Wayzata guy. They're going to advocate for themselves. So we're putting together these, so to speak, dream teams for the district to compete against the rest of the state, and you guys need to be a part of that. Here's all the information. We do pretty good sometimes. So we're the Walleyes. That's the team name, District 3 Walleyes. All right. That was quick. I don't want to get between you guys and the great stuff he's got going. Any questions? Okay. If you guys have a question, complaint, andynordseth@gmail.com. It's on the website. Please send me your complaint and proposed solution. Be happy to pass it on.
Do we not need to go to the D3 meeting in Brooklyn Park tomorrow then?
If you're a squirter 10U, you do. If you're not, you don't. This is in lieu of that. Squirt 10U, because they're new, they want to see them firsthand. You guys have been through this before, so you're just getting the update from me and have the opportunity to ask questions. But no, Squirt 10U only.
Is there a limit for the number of assistant coaches you can have being rostered and stuff?
No, not on the roster, but there's a limit on the bench. I think it's 4.
Correct.
And if they're on the bench, they have to be on the roster. Be clear on that. But there's no limit, but there's a limit on the bench.
What if we don't know about this and we are in 10 years for coach?
Tell us more.
Tell us more.
What?
I don't know about this.
Oh, the meeting, it's just like this, but it's going to be just a little bit longer. And you just,
I don't know about where the head coach is.
oh, you don't know about that? It's at Brooklyn Park tomorrow night at 7:30. Brooklyn Park Community Center. There'll be two different. Yeah, there's two. It happens at the same time. There's a manager meeting to talk about manager stuff, and there's a coach meeting to talk about coach stuff.
Yeah, sorry. I think
Where, Brooklyn Park at the rink or where?
At the rink. It'll be in one of the meeting rooms down the hall. Anything else? Okay, thanks again for being coaches.
All right, I'm gonna go like really quick because I'm gonna go get my stuff on. So I'm just gonna intro what I'm gonna do on the ice. Just get into the hockey stuff. Basically, the whole idea is we're gonna use a constraint-led approach to develop players, and then I have the technical, tactical, and transferable. And I'll get into what I mean by that too. So some of this stuff might be in the coaching clinics for USA Hockey, and it's been a while since I've been at one of those, but so if I repeat anything, like that's cool. Hopefully I dive into it a little bit deeper today. If they don't cover this stuff, then hopefully it'll be helpful for you. So what is constraint-led approach? Basically, it's a framework for coaching that kind of differs from a traditional approach where it's going to be more designed on the coach constraining the environment and then having the kids figure out, basically getting them to do what we want them to do without telling them. So what are some constraints? Kind of 3 categories: performer, environment, task. The performer one you're not really going to deal with, but I think it's important to be aware of, like a player's certain mood or their size or their strength. Just be aware of that type of stuff is a constraint on their performance. The environment is just going to be the area of the ice and boundaries on different drills. You know, it's not only small area games. It could be a 2-on-1 drill where you're saying you have to stay inside the dot lane. And then task constraints are going to be our rules for small area games. So, you know, you have to pass twice before you can score. You have to score off a one-timer, stuff like that. So, example, kind of like showing the difference between like old school method and new school. Let's say your players are holding the puck for too long and they're not passing. So in the olden days, coach would just scream at the player to pass the puck. We've found that creating a rule in a keep-away game where they have to pass the puck in 2 seconds is actually more effective to getting them to do that. Otherwise, they lose their shift. So that's just kind of the example. This is my last slide, so I told you it was going to be quick. I stole this from the University of Michigan head coach, Brandon Naurato. I think he's one of the best people on planet Earth at developing skill. Basically, everything we're doing on the ice should be in one of these 3 buckets. So technical, we're working on technical skills. That's everything, skill development, skating skills, puck handling, technical shooting. We can still use the constraint-led approach with technical skills. So example, if you have a player that is having a hard time getting on their outside edge or putting pressure on it, old school method would just be to tell the player, maybe show the player how to get on their outside edge. A constraint-led approach to that, not to sound that's weird, but putting a black divider on the ice and having them step over with their right foot and saying, when you land on this right foot, I have to be facing you. So we're putting a constraint on the ice, they're stepping over, they have to shave on their outside edge, and now they're facing you. Okay, so we can still use that for skill development. The other example is like if we've taken a golf lesson and you're coming over the top, right? And they put a pool noodle behind you to force you to not do that. Yeah, Cade comes over the top back there. He's one of my high school guys. That constraint, that pool noodle, is an example of this. Okay, so tactical. This is getting into explaining the why behind certain stuff that we do, and then getting into adding coach token pressure or player token pressure, getting them to read and react to certain things. And then the last one is transferable skills. So this is full pressure, live gameplay, small area games, stuff like that. So that was really quick. I think I covered everything I wanted to, but I'm going to dive into a lot of stuff on the ice. So again, thank you for coming. I wanted to get you out of here before football starts, so we'll try to do that. Last thing, Cade and Finn, D. St. Hubert, I'm going to go get my stuff on. They have a couple things about the dollar drive donations. I know we did a little bit of it last year. We're going to try to ramp it up and get every team involved this year, so raise some money.
I'm Cade D. St. Hubert.
I'm Finn D. St. Hubert.
We'll keep this quick because you guys have been here for a while, and Miles was boring me to death too, but it'll be all right. Team Tucker and the D. St. Dollar Drive is kind of just a nonprofit that we help support and run with the help of Dana Hellstrom. So Team Tucker, get into the specifics a little bit, helps kids with life-threatening diseases, a lot of them with cancer patients. They help them support, they help them with like, a lot of them are going to pass away. A lot, you can't do anything about that, but they help pay for flights for family members to come to them. They help get them to maybe a wild game on some of their last days. They've also helped pay for treatments for some of them and help keep them alive. She started this as her son, and one of our best friends, Tucker, passed away at the age of 9. He actually had leg cancer at our squirt year and helped coach us through all of that. He played baseball with us through all of this, but sadly passed away due to lung cancer about a year later. So we felt impacted by him, as he was an awesome person, always had fun, always had a smile on his face through squirt years, through baseball years, mostly baseball. He was a better baseball player. But so we just wanted to help keep his memory going through the D. St. Dollar Drive and Team Tucker. D. St. Dollar Drive is something that we've started about 4 years ago, and we keep expanding. We started at Hopkins, and now we're hoping a lot of you guys will help join us. Finn will bring us into a little more details on that.
So basically, we ask teams to raise as much money they can through a 14-day period, I think it is, in the middle of January, we're asking you guys to like get us in contact or like get a team leader on your team that wants to lead it and raise the money. So this could be a captain or a player. If you guys have kids on the team, you could have them do it. But basically, they just find ways to raise money. This could be bringing containers to games, asking parents, grandparents for money. This could also be like going door to door. We've had teams in other associations do that. We did the Bantam AA team last year. The Wayzata Bantam AA team had a tape thing, so they would tape people's sticks and have the money, the proceeds go to the St. Jive Foundation. So basically, we're asking you guys to get us in contact with a kid who wants to lead it because we like going through kids. We think it helps build their character and help them become a leader even more in the future.
Yeah, so if you guys, I know a lot of people are busy, so if you guys will have an opportunity to do this, we'd love our emails, our phone numbers are on these flyers that we can hand out. We also can email you guys the flyers if we found that's easier. But if you guys could get us in contact, we could come talk to your teams. We're getting more and more teams, so it is harder with the hockey season going as we're both on the high school hockey team here too. But we can come talk to your teams about kind of why we started Team Tucker, and hopefully that'll impact them and lead them to do that more. Does anyone have any questions? We covered that really fast here. No? Okay, we'll leave these flyers at the back, and then we'll have Miles email out a lot of information. We'd love your guys' support, and thank you for taking your time.
Thank you for your time.